There's a moment in Puhoy that I can't stop thinking about. Finn crawls through a cushion fort, falls into a soft, warm world made entirely of pillows, and lives a whole life there. And the whole thing lasts maybe 20 minutes of screen time. And when it's over, he pops back out of the fort, and Jake asks if he's okay. And Finn just says yeah, and they move on. Because what Puhoy actually is, underneath the Adventure Time weirdness, is a 9-year-old kid crawling into a fort and dreaming about what it would feel like to have a normal human life. One where nothing is trying to kill him, and the people he loves don't disappear, and he gets to just exist without the weight of being the hero pressing down on him every single day. Let's actually talk about what Finn's early life looks like from the outside, because I think when you lay it out plainly, it hits differently than when it's scattered across seasons. He was abandoned as an infant, placed on a raft and sent into the ocean. We know Martin fought for him, but Finn didn't know that for most of his life. All he had was the fact of it, a baby who washed up in a forest and got found by dogs. He was raised by dogs. Joshua and Margaret clearly adored him, but dogs, not humans. Not anyone who understood what it meant to grow up human, to need human things, to eventually want human connection, in the specific way that only humans can give each other. Finn grew up without a single peer his age, and then by 12 years old, he's the hero of the land. He's fighting liches and ice kings and cosmic threats. He's being sent into situations that would break trained adults. And the show frames it as adventure because that's how Finn frames it. Because Finn learned early that enthusiasm was his best defense against everything that was actually wrong. The vault is the thing that cracks this open the most. We find out partway through the series that Finn has this mental compartment where he stores emotions he can't deal with. Things that don't fit inside the hero narrative he's built around himself. He just puts them in the vault and locks the door and keeps moving. And the show treats this partly as a quirky character detail. It's what you develop when you're a child who has no framework for processing loss, no parents who look like you, and no peers who understand you. He learned to compartmentalize before he learned to feel. And the stuff that's in the vault, it's all the things a child should have been allowed to cry about. His father, his arm, Flame Princess, the accumulated weight of years of being needed by everyone and having nowhere to put what that cost him. It all went in the vault because there was nowhere else for it to go. When Finn loses his arm and escapes from the Citadel, the show gives him an episode to process the rage of it, the tower. He builds a psychic arm out of anger and flies towards space, and eventually lets it go. The show treats that as the processing. He grows a new arm eventually and life continues. But losing your arm at 14, losing it because your father's departure tore it off, losing it in the most visceral physical expression of paternal abandonment possible, that's not something you process in one episode of Rage and then move past. That kind of thing lives in you. It changes how you think about yourself. And Finn never fully got to fall apart about it, because there was always something else, always another person who needed saving. The world didn't stop because he was 14 and had just lost a piece of himself in the most traumatic way imaginable. That's what it means to never have a childhood. It doesn't just mean you missed out on playgrounds and birthday parties. It means the world never gave you a moment where the most important thing happening was just you and what you were going through. Go back to Puhoy with me. The reason he crawls into that fort in the first place is that Jake and BMO are ignoring him. It's a small thing, but Finn, who almost never admits to needing attention, who almost never says out loud that he's lonely, or that he needs someone to just be with him, Finn tries to tell them something and nobody's listening, and he just quietly goes to find somewhere else to be. That's such a specific kind of loneliness. The kind that's been there so long, you don't even recognize it as loneliness anymore. You just move toward the cushion fort because at least in there, you're the only person who exists. And in the pillow world, he gets everything. He gets a family that needs him in the gentle way, the human way. Not because there's a monster to fight, but just because he's there and he's theirs. He gets to watch his kids grow up. He gets to be old and slow and finished. He gets to die knowing he lived a full life. The Finn and Jake relationship is one of the most genuinely loving things in the entire show. I want to be clear about that. Jake is not a bad brother, but Jake is also 14 years older than Finn, and Jake has a philosophy built entirely around going with the the flow, taking things easy, not letting anything stick too hard, which is a beautiful way to live if you're Jake. If you're an ancient magical dog who was literally born with supernatural powers and grew up with 2 loving parents and has never once in your life had to wonder whether you were wanted, it is a genuinely difficult philosophy to be raised inside of if you're Finn. If you're a child who needed someone to teach you how to sit with hard feelings, how to ask for what you need, rather than just absorbing everything and converting it into action and forward motion, Jake loved Finn completely, and Jake was also, in some important ways, not equipped to raise a human child, and nobody else was doing it. So Finn learned to take care of himself the way Jake took care of everything, by not taking it too seriously and keeping it moving. There's an episode called Blank-Eyed Girl that barely gets talked about. Finn and Jake investigate these blank-eyed girls, and Finn starts to become one of them. But I always thought it was accidentally something else, because there are stretches of the show where Finn does exactly that. He keeps going, but something behind his eyes has gone quiet, and the show doesn't have the vocabulary to name it, so it just keeps moving. Breezy is the episode that names it. Dr. Princess looks at him and says his flower is drooping, and Finn says, "I don't know, I guess I don't feel anything." He doesn't feel anything. And instead of someone sitting him down and saying, "Hey, that's not okay, that's actually a sign that something is very wrong," he goes on a kissing spree trying to feel something, trying to jumpstart something that's gone cold inside him. And the show understands that this is sad. It treats it with unusual maturity actually, but it also doesn't give him a person who can fully hold that. He needed that so badly, and the show kept almost giving it to him and then cutting to the next adventure. Here's what I keep coming back to. The thing about childhoods is that they're not just about what happens to you. They're about having the space to figure out who you are before the world needs something from you. Finn never got that. By the time he was old enough to start asking the big questions, who am I, he'd already been the hero of the world for years, and he'd already built an identity around being needed, and that identity is genuinely good. Finn is genuinely good. Everything he became is real and earned and worth celebrating, but it was also built on a foundation that had some things missing, some questions that got vaulted before they could be answered, and you can see it in how he loves. The desperate quality of the early bubblegum feelings, not just a crush, but something that felt like survival. The way the Flame Princess relationship burned so hot so fast, because here was finally someone who felt as elemental as everything he carried. The long, slow ache of Huntress Wizard, the first relationship he actually approached with patience, which only became possible after he'd lost enough things to understand that forcing doesn't work. His whole romantic history is the story of a kid slowly learning how to want things without needing them to save him. Puhoy ends with Finn coming back through the cushion fort. He's been gone decades in Pillow World time. He lived a whole life, and he comes back through that portal, and he's 9 years old again, and Jake asks if he's okay. The show never tells you what Finn takes away from that, whether it comforted him or wrecked him or both. The show just lets it be a thing that happened and moves on. But I think it mattered more than anything else in the series, because in that episode, Finn got to find out what he was made of outside of being a hero. That he could be a father, a husband, a neighbor. That there was a whole person in there underneath the sword and the hat, and the endless willingness to run toward danger. He just never got to be that person here. And maybe that's the most heartbreaking thing Adventure Time ever did. It kept showing you who Finn could have been in a different life. It showed you that person, and then it took him back. And Finn just said, "Yeah, I'm fine," and kept going. Because that's what Finn does. That's all he ever learned how to do. Leave a like if this one hit different. Subscribe if you're new, because this is the kind of deep dive you'll find here regularly. I'll catch you in the next one.